The story of how America became a global empire doesn't begin with tanks or treaties. It begins with an idea. In the 19th century, the United States was still finding its footing. Battered by civil war but energized by manifest destiny, a fire burned in the minds of American leaders. The belief that this young republic was destined for greatness, not just on the continent, but across the seas. From the Pacific coast to the Caribbean, whispers of influence began turning into declarations. Alaska was purchased in 1867 from Russia, mocked as Seward's folly, but quietly strategic. Soon after, American business interests eyed Hawaii, not for its hula skirts or volcanoes, but its sugar plantations and deep-water ports. The seeds of empire were being planted, not just with rifles, but with railroads, corporations, and missionaries. In the background, the doctrine of American exceptionalism began shaping foreign policy. Politicians and businessmen alike pushed the idea that the U.S. had a divine mission to civilize the world, echoing European colonial rhetoric, but painting it red, white, and blue. These weren't just ambitions, they were carefully constructed visions of power, wrapped in patriotism and sold to the public as destiny. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy was growing. Alfred Thayer Mahan's The Influence of Sea Power Upon History became the blueprint for future dominance. Naval bases were secured across the Pacific, from Guam to the Philippines. And as American companies poured capital into Latin America and Asia, a quiet empire of money, markets, and military protection began to unfold. But if these moves seemed subtle, that would soon change. Because by the end of the 19th century, America's imperial vision would explode into full view, with a war fought not on U.S. soil, but in Cuba and the Philippines. The Spanish-American War was coming, and it would mark the official debut of the United States as a global power. By the late 1890s, the world was watching a young America ready to flex its newfound muscles. The Spanish Empire, once a titan, was crumbling. Its colonies, Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, were restless and seeking independence. The United States, driven by economic interests and a growing sense of mission, found itself increasingly involved. Tensions mounted in Cuba. American newspapers, practicing what would later be called yellow journalism, sensationalized Spanish atrocities and human suffering. Headlines screamed for intervention, stirring the public's emotions. Behind the scenes, businessmen worried about their investments in sugar plantations. Politicians debated the costs and benefits of war. Then, on February 15, 1898, the USS Maine exploded mysteriously in Havana Harbor, killing 266 American sailors. The cause remains debated, but at the time, the event was the spark the U.S. needed. The rallying cry was immediate: "Remember the Maine! To hell with Spain!" Within months, Congress declared war on Spain. The Spanish-American War was swift but transformative. American forces, both military and naval, crushed Spanish fleets and liberated colonies. The Treaty of Paris in 1898 handed the U.S. control over Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, and effectively marked the United States' entry into global empire status. Yet, this victory came with complications. The Philippines, instead of gaining independence, became an American colony, sparking a brutal insurgency. Across the Pacific, Americans wrestled with questions about imperialism, liberty, and the nation's identity. Was America a liberator or a colonizer? The war also signaled a new era of military power. The U.S. Navy's decisive victories confirmed its strategic importance. Bases in the Caribbean and Pacific allowed America to project power like never before. But the cost of empire was not just measured in dollars or battles, it was measured in ideals. As America stood poised on the global stage, a fierce debate brewed at home. Could a nation founded on freedom justify empire? And while the guns of the Spanish-American War quieted, The rumblings of future conflicts and new ambitions were just beginning. After the Spanish-American War, America's ambitions didn't fade. They intensified. The war had revealed the young nation's military might and its appetite for influence. At the heart of this new era was Theodore Roosevelt, a man whose energy and vision would shape America's global destiny. Roosevelt was no ordinary politician. A war hero, he led the famed Rough Riders, a volunteer cavalry regiment that charged up San Juan Hill in Cuba, a moment that became legendary. His boldness symbolized a new America, confident, assertive, ready to challenge old powers. But Roosevelt wasn't just a soldier. He was a strategist and a diplomat who believed in a philosophy summed up by his famous phrase, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." This wasn't just about words. It was about backing diplomacy with undeniable military power. Under Roosevelt's leadership, America took on a more aggressive role in global affairs. One of the boldest moves was in Central America, where the U.S. helped orchestrate Panama's independence from Colombia. Why? Because Panama's location was key for the construction of a canal that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The Panama Canal project was a marvel of engineering and a strategic masterstroke. By creating a shortcut between two oceans, America could move its navy and commercial ships faster than ever before. It was a clear signal. The United States was no longer a regional power confined to its own continent. It was a true global empire. But not everyone cheered this expansion. Critics decried the intervention in Panama as imperialistic and a betrayal of America's founding principles. Yet Roosevelt pushed forward, insisting that America's role was to police the Western Hemisphere, keeping peace through strength. This approach came to be known as the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. It declared that the U.S. had the right to intervene in Latin America to stabilize economies or governments when necessary, essentially positioning America as the hemisphere's big brother. These moves set the stage for decades of American involvement, abroad, sometimes welcomed, often resented. As Roosevelt's vision reshaped America's foreign policy, the country stood at a crossroads. Would it continue expanding its influence peacefully, or would power struggles abroad lead it into conflict? By the early 20th century, Europe was a powder keg, with powerful empires locked in tense rivalries. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 lit the fuse, igniting World War I conflict unlike any before, marked by brutal trench warfare and staggering casualties. At first, the United States clung to its traditional policy of neutrality. President Woodrow Wilson believed America should stay out of the European war and focus on domestic growth. The nation's motto was simple: America first. But neutrality wasn't easy to maintain. Economic ties with the Allies grew stronger, and unrestricted submarine warfare by Germany threatened American ships and lives. The sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, which killed 128 Americans, shocked the nation. The final straw came in 1917 when Germany sent the Zimmermann telegram, a secret message to Mexico, urging an alliance against the U.S. The revelation stirred anger and fear across the country. With the public demanding action, Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany. America mobilized quickly, transforming from a hesitant spectator to an active participant in the world's deadliest conflict. American troops, called the American Expeditionary Forces, brought fresh energy and resources to the weary Allies. The U.S. military's involvement helped turn the tide, hastening the end of the war in 1918. But the impact of World War I went far beyond the battlefield. The war marked America's emergence as a global superpower, with newfound military strength and economic influence. Wilson's vision for a peace without victory led to the creation of the League of Nations, an early attempt to prevent future wars through diplomacy. However, Congress refused to join, wary of entangling alliances. Meanwhile, the war's devastation in Europe created a power vacuum. America's industrial capacity had boomed, making it the world's largest creditor and economic powerhouse. The experience also sparked a shift in American identity. No longer isolated, the U.S. was now deeply intertwined with global affairs, ready to shape the 20th century in profound ways. But this rise came with challenges. How would America balance its ideals with its expanding influence? Could it wield its power responsibly? By the late 1930s, storm clouds once again gathered over Europe and Asia. While America grappled with the Great Depression at home, fascist regimes were rising abroad. Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, and an increasingly militaristic empire in Japan. The world was careening toward another catastrophic conflict. Initially, the United States resisted involvement. The trauma of World War I still haunted the public consciousness. Isolationism ran deep. Congress passed neutrality acts to keep America out of another foreign war. But history, it seemed, had other plans. On December 7, 1941, Japanese warplanes attacked Pearl Harbor. Overnight, isolationism gave way to unity and resolve. The U.S. declared war on Japan, and soon on Germany and Italy as well. America mobilized like never before. The nation's factories, once producing cars and household goods, now churned out tanks, planes, and ammunition. Rosie the Riveter became a symbol of national strength as women entered the workforce in droves. The entire country, every industry, every town became part of the war machine. Fighting on two fronts, America played a decisive role. In Europe, U.S. troops stormed the beaches of Normandy and pushed through France into Nazi Germany. In the Pacific, brutal island-hopping campaigns brought American forces closer to Japan. The war ended in 1945 with Germany's surrender and the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But victory brought more than peace. It brought power. In the aftermath, much of Europe and Asia lay in ruins. The Soviet Union emerged as a rival superpower. The world was no longer multipolar, it was bipolar. The Cold War had begun. America stepped into its role as global leader. The Marshall Plan helped rebuild Western Europe. NATO was formed to counter Soviet aggression. The United Nations, headquartered in New York, became a symbol of America's commitment to global diplomacy. At home, the war ushered in a period of unprecedented prosperity. The GI Bill helped returning soldiers attend college and buy homes. Suburbs expanded. The middle class exploded. The American dream seemed within reach for millions, though not all. Civil rights, women's rights, and anti-war movements simmered beneath the surface, demanding justice. Meanwhile, America expanded its influence through soft power Hollywood. Jazz, blue jeans, and fast food became global exports. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. The United States wasn't just a country anymore, it was a brand, a beacon, an empire of ideas and industries. By the end of the 20th century, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and America stood alone as the world's sole superpower. Its military bases stretched across continents. Its economy influenced every market. Its culture permeated every corner of the globe. But the rise came with questions. How would America wield its influence in a complex world? Could it maintain its empire without losing its soul? And what happens when the empire begins to crack? The story of how America became a global empire is not just about war and diplomacy. It's about ambition, contradictions, and the enduring tension between power and principle. That story continues today. Thank you for joining this journey through history, mystery, and the stars. If you want to uncover more untold stories from history, hit subscribe and stay tuned.